Shanny Hill, you are the marketing manager at TDA Global Cycling. Thank you so much, good sir, for taking the time to join me today on the Fact Up podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for thinking of me.
Of course, man. I mean, you run. We'll get to it, but I've been wanting to do a few of your races for as long as we've known each other, which is now a good decade. But again, time and stamina is not on my side. But TDA Global Cycling has been called, a specialist in long distance trips, best adventure travel company. For those who don't know what TDA Global Cycling is all about, give us a brief overview of the company, what it's about, and what makes you guys so celebrated and respected.
Yeah, sure. Well, we've been around since 2003, and the way we differentiate ourselves from every other bike tour operator, we think, is that we specialize in really long trips. So they're multi-country, multi-week, multi-month trips sometimes. So in 2003, the founder, Henry Gold, created a trip called the Tour d'Afrique that goes from Cairo to Cape Town. It's a 4-month trip across Africa through
Amazing.
10 countries.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so we've created a whole series of similar trips. They're actually not races, any of them. The Tour d'Afrique used to be run as a race as well as an expedition, but all of them are sort of just run as a trip where people cover the distance each day. And yeah.
Right. I mean, you mentioned, that Tour d'Afrique, it starts at the pyramids of Giza, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It goes straight down Africa to Cape Town in South Africa. Talk about the popularity of that course and talk about the logistics involved in organizing and executing a course like that, because it goes far beyond just the cycle. It goes into the food, it goes into the accommodation. Explain that for listeners and viewers.
Yeah, sure. You bring up a good point. And if we weren't a company that really enjoyed problem solving and logistics, this would not have happened. We really like that part of it. And so for the tour, you're absolutely right. The cycling is certainly challenging for the participants, but we're challenged with finding enough food for a large group. There's situations where in northern Kenya, we go through areas that are sparsely populated. It's a desert environment, and water can be very hard to source. We also don't want to overburden the local communities by buying out the whole bread supply if we can avoid it. So there's all these little details that are happening in the background, and we love it. We love trying to figure that stuff out, and you have to do a lot of planning ahead to book the places you're going to stay, and arranging for food drops occasionally when we're in more remote areas. Usually it's just going to a local market or something, but there's always got to be a solution. You can't fail on any particular day. The riders have to eat.
Yeah, and they have to drink, right? I guess that's my next question. How do you deal with those kind of challenges that come along the way, those adversities that come along the way, where maybe water isn't as readily available as you want it to be, or you may have to find that tough balance of not raiding, so to speak, the local market and leaving food for the locals, obviously, but still taking care of the people that are coming through? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, so we on occasion, like in the worst parts of the trip, we do have sort of water rations for our group. So there'll be stretches of maybe 2 to 3 days, sometimes longer, but usually not, where there isn't enough water for showering, and it's just drinking water and water for cooking and cleanup and stuff like that. So that's one thing. And then we work with staff like drivers and local guides who have worked with us for many years and know all the secret watering holes, and help us figure it out.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure by the time 1 week goes, 1 week into the race, or the cycling tour itself, I'm sure a lot of the people that are included and involved become sort of like family, right? Now you're in it together for the long haul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've actually been doing a little bit of writing on our blog recently about the importance of the group, and how the group can really make or break the trip, and group morale is hugely important. And for the vast majority of our groups, a lot of them keep in touch through the years. Just at the start of 2021, we had the 2011 riders all get together for a group Zoom call to do a reunion,
Awesome.
Almost a decade later. And I popped in just to see who was there, and there was 25 or 30 of them, and they're all, just, so excited to see each other. So, and we've had people meet on the tour and get married. We've had, family units come together, like a father and a daughter and father and son and that sort of thing. So very interesting.
Awesome. That's amazing. I remember years ago, I was reading that diarrhea and sunburn are your two biggest obstacles when doing that course. Is that true still?
Yeah, I might add like saddle sore and, all those unpleasant things, but no, you're right. It's dehydration is a killer. And so you mix that with people eating food that they're not used to and being exposed to bacteria they're not used to, and it's a recipe for illness. And it definitely happens. Like a long trip like that, you'd be very lucky not to have one bout of that happening. Especially for that trip through Africa, we always have a tour medic with us. So very important just to monitor people's health and give them advice when they are feeling sick.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. Just so people in the future, when they're thinking about doing something like this, that you're being taken care of every step of the way. It's not like we're going down Africa and it's like, all right, everybody for themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly.
On your website, you mentioned, how sailors have the 7 seas, mountain climbers the 7 summits, marathon runners the 7 marathons, and now cyclists have the 7 epics, the 7 monster adventure routes. We've talked about the Tour d'Afrique. Talk about the others, and why is each of them an adventure of a lifetime?
Yeah, so the ones that make up the 7 epic, the main trips are the Tour d'Afrique we just spoke of, the Silk Route, the South American epic, the North American epic, and a couple other trips. So these are our longest and most challenging trips. They're all run in a similar way. They have the same support system, but as you alluded to, they're all unique beasts, and they all allow you to experience a different part of the world, different cultures. But each trip has its own feel as well. The Silk Route, the Tour d'Afrique is all camping, so every night you're camping, whereas the Silk Route is a mix of camping and hotels. And we vary the types of accommodation based on what's appropriate, what's available, and that sort of thing. So you get a different feel for it. So in the Silk Route, you're usually camping for 3 or 4 nights, and then you have a hotel for 2 nights. You're going through some fascinating places in Central Asia, through the stands. Like Kyrgyzstan is a gorgeous, gorgeous country. And for me, like just the pure pleasure of coming to a place that on its own, you probably never would have thought to go and check out. But as part of this grand adventure, you're just so pleasantly surprised to experience a place that you wouldn't have otherwise been to,
Absolutely. For people who are geography bums and geography nuts, give us an idea of start and end points when you're talking about the 6 other epics.
Sure. So the Silk Route starts in Beijing, and it travels west all the way to Istanbul. So that's 4.5 month, 12,000 kilometer trip or something like that. The longest of our epics are the 2. So the North American epic is a nearly 6-month long trip. It goes from Tuk to Yuk-Tuk at the Arctic Ocean, and it comes all the way through North America to the Panama Canal. So that's such a big undertaking that we only run that trip once every 3 years. And obviously it's been disrupted a bit with the pandemic, but typically it's every 3rd year. And the South American epic is similar length to the North American epic, 5.5 months. And it starts in Colombia, in Cartagena, and goes all the way to the southern tip in Ushuaia.
Wow. I cycle 40K, and I feel like I'm a superstar. If I were to do, 150 a day, for people who don't have the time or the stamina, you don't just offer the epics, you offer kind of something a little bit more kind of my speed, which is shorter amount of time and less distance, right? Talk about the 5-week cycle routes, such as the one in Madagascar, which you guys call the 8th continent for good reason. 5 weeks cycling, around Italy, and you even have a route that goes from Chicago to Toronto, right?
Um, yes, so I'll explain that one. So that's we have two new trips that actually encircle the Great Lakes. So the starting point is Toronto, and we do a loop of the lake, and then they transfer to Chicago and do a loop of Lake Michigan.
Wow.
So that's a brand new one, a post-pandemic trip we launched, or mid-pandemic, however you want to call it.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, sorry. So the trips, the shorter trips, which sounds a little funny when it's 5 weeks, but for us those are our shorter trips.
Right.
Madagascar is a great adventure, and these allow people to have sort of a bucket list epic adventure, but within a reasonable amount of time. Not everyone can take 4 months off work, obviously. So we try to vary that. Even for our long expeditions, you can do like a 2-week segment of it as well. So we try to remain flexible that way. But, going back to what you were saying, we hear it all the time that, I'm not fit enough, I could never do that. But that's also another great joy we have with our company, is that we really do market to people like you, Jim. Like we are not taking on a lot of Uber athletes. It's really just people that get captivated with an idea. And, we don't hold their hands through it, but we give them the truth. We tell them the truth about what to expect. We recommend some training. And the reality is that most people have it in them. It's really a mental game, and physically they're capable of it. And when you kind of set your mind to a big goal, like it becomes a little easier, especially when you have someone else preparing the meals and thinking about your safety and all the other outside factors.
Right. And then boom, right? Shanny, COVID hits, shutting down the entire planet. What are some of those challenges that you've now had to go through and continue, I guess, to go through over the next little while until this thing kind of, disappears or kind of gradually even goes away?
Mm-hmm. Well, like much of the travel industry, we just basically shut down all of our trips in March, and we made some early attempts to run trips in the fall of 2020, and it was just too soon. And so, we spent all this time, first of all, making sure that everyone was refunded who wanted their money back. We were very upfront and very, we were just going to do the right thing with everyone. And we were thinking in the long term that, if we show them that we're doing this now, they're going to come back for years to come when we're able to run trips again. So we tried to do things like that. We kept speaking to each other daily and planning new trips and reassessing the situation. Really, just like anyone else, we're no different. And I guess the only unique thing for us is that, the challenge for tourism, most tour companies run a trip in one region of one country, whereas we're trying to cross land borders, and, the levels of complication get a little more thick for us in that sense. So, what we do is we plan some alternative trips and, trips that we kind of keep in our back pocket. So we mentioned earlier that we have a new trip called the Great Lakes series. So we're based in Toronto. And so we thought, why don't we have a shorter trip where people could do a 10-day loop around Lake Ontario, and then you kind of string them together, and it's a 5-lake series that they could do over 2 summers. So we're trying to get creative and, think of new ways that we can appeal to people closer to home and in single countries in some cases.
Yeah, and hope that those borders kind of open up sooner than later when the time is right. It makes your job far easier, right?
Yeah.
When the global recession hit a few years ago, I remember in Toronto, many more people started to ride their bikes, to school and to work. It was kind of more economical. It was more environmentally, friendly. That bicycle movement has only gotten bigger and bigger. Is it any surprise to you that bike sharing programs in North America, and we'll just speak about Toronto specifically, is it any surprise to you that bike lanes and the bike culture has kind of gotten a lot more positive? Bike lanes have been built, a lot more have been expanded. Does that surprise you at all?
It surprises me just because there's been a lot of lack of inertia in Toronto. It's been very slow going for people that like myself that cycle every day. we can be a bit self-righteous and think we, because we see it every day that, you could see how the city could benefit from it, and the drivers can benefit from it as well, because, the more that we create multiple modes of transportation, the more space there is for everyone. So it's been great to see it. It is a surprise to me, but like many things, once a city councillor sees the results of something, they're on board, and they see, how this is a political advantage all of a sudden, instead of being, this war on the cars, or, the silly things that it's been in the past. So it's good to see.
Right. Right. I've been to Amsterdam, and I love the bike culture there. I was in Copenhagen in 2019. I've never felt safer riding a bike in my life than in Copenhagen. Cyclists have, there's curbs that kind of separate the road from the bike lanes. Cyclists have, their own passing lane, their own traffic lights. It's amazing. What's the issue here, let's say in Toronto, when it comes to the battle between drivers and cyclists? Can the cultures come together eventually? Is there like a mutual respect eventually coming? What needs to happen? Is it somebody getting hurt? Is it somebody's MPP getting hurt? And then finally kind of energizing that change and that need for change? Can the cultures get together, and what needs to happen for that to happen?
Yeah, it's hard to change mindsets. And, I empathize with someone that has to commute from the suburbs, from the north of the city or wherever. Their only option is to commute by car, and it must be extremely frustrating. But the mindset can be changed for the policymakers and for people that can choose different modes of transportation. To think about it, there's people talk recently about how we need to think not about how to move cars more efficiently, but how to move people more efficiently, right? So cars or bus or bike, it doesn't really matter. How do we get the most amount of people moved to where they need to go each day? And I don't think we're doing that right now. We're, every time there's too much traffic, then we try to expand the highways. And, it's a lose-lose situation, because, as soon as you expand the highways, then more cars will fill up that space. It's just the way it works. But if you build bike lanes and you, in some situations, deter car moving by car, then you're moving some of those people onto public transit, some of them onto bikes, and you're encouraging these forms of transport that don't take up as much road space, and they're better for the environment. So yeah, it's a mindset that has to change.
I mean, many of us have been active over the past few months. I feel like many will still be in the mood to social distance far more and far longer after this kind of dissipates. Cycling is obviously human powered for the most part. It's good for the environment. Practices kind of safe social distancing, good for the heart. Do you see cycling as a preferred way of travel, at least in the near future, and by more people? And if so, how does that change your marketing strategy, if any?
Yeah, well, I definitely see that, and I think that the numbers have shown that during the pandemic that a lot of people have bought a bike, or they've pulled one out of the garage and they've decided to cycle to work instead of using the public transit, for example. So for us, it's for every one person that chooses to start riding and really enjoys it, there might be someone eventually that chooses to do a weekend bike trip, and then they want to do something longer. And at some point, one of those people becomes our customer and they want to do a big epic trip. So if you have a bigger pool of potential customers, it's good for us, and it's good for all the cycle touring businesses out there, and for the bike shops and all of these things.
So start small.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And we've, that's been one of the projects we've had during the pandemic, is to create a lot of informational blogs and videos on, how to repair a flat tire and how to pack your bike to take it on the airplane. And so, we're trying to build in these things to make it easier for people to convince themselves to do a big trip.
Here's a bit of a deeper question. How does cycling help in the bigger picture of uniting people, cultures, and how does cycling help in understanding our world better?
Well, I think in my experience, in my own cycle touring and just seeing our participants on our tours, is, it doesn't bridge the gap entirely, but what it does is, when you're cycling through a place. We believe that people experience that differently than they do seeing a group of tourists on a bus going through their town. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we've all been on different types of tours and experiences, but cycling is unique, just as hiking is unique, in that you're really exposed and you're in some ways vulnerable. And I think some people really respect that, and they can relate more to someone who's not behind glass and, in a vehicle. So, that's a small thing, but it just kind of gets you out there and gets you out of your comfort zone. It can be intimidating to travel when you don't speak the language and you don't understand the mannerisms and the cultures. So that kind of helps to just force it on you.
Does that encourage, you think, more connection with people that would never have probably come into contact with each other if they were on a bus, or if they took a car, or if they were in a group? Is it always a special sight to see when locals connect with people that they never thought they'd interact with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an exchange, right? And hopefully you're getting something from that experience, but hopefully they are as well. It's like I find traveling in places like East Africa really eye-opening, because there are huge challenges for a lot of people in these places, but being there in person just humanizes everything and makes you stop thinking about people as a massive, as a country, as a group, or as a subset of something. They're individuals, right? So they all have individual challenges and individual joys as well. So.
And you start to figure out that we're far more connected than you thought. Right?
Yeah. Like, we all kind of know that, but we forget about it.
Yeah. I mean, on a personal level, Shanny, why cycling? How has cycling helped overcome challenges in your life personally?
It's it's a great way to clear your mind. It's a very solitary thing. It can be, anyways. If you're having a hard day and you go for a ride, it doesn't have to be a hard ride necessarily, but just to be out in the world and getting a bit of exercise. I find it's very valuable for someone's mental health, and so that's an important thing for me.
Yeah, definitely. Rapid fire, my good man. I'm going to ask you 10 questions. There's nothing rapid about this. Take your time. All right.
Okay. I'm intimidated now.
No, don't be intimidated. But yeah, it's a good thing you're drinking some water. What was what was the first bike you ever got?
I had a CCM. It was a CCM. I don't remember the make, but that was the brand.
Well, how old were you, and how fast did you destroy it?
I was probably, I'd say, I don't know, 7 or 8, and I was actually very. My brother destroyed a lot of bikes, but I was the one who leaned it up against the shed, and he's the one who threw it in the dirt. So.
Gotcha. What do you prefer, cycling in a group or solo?
If I have to choose one, I guess solo, but I enjoy both. Yeah.
If you're on a long ride, you stop to take a break to get a boost. What are you drinking? A grapefruit radler or espresso?
Oh, let's say espresso.
Okay. All right. Favorite cycling destination?
Oh, wow. Well, I mentioned it earlier. Let's say Kyrgyzstan is a really gorgeous and unique place to cycle.
What is it that captivates you about that place?
Oh, the mountains and the streams and the rural sites. Just gorgeous place. Really,
Right.
really nice.
A place in the world that's inspired you the most?
Like a country or a place?
Any place. Any place that's kind of captivated you.
I think Paris is a place that's, for just like anyone else, it's just a really interesting place. I would say Rwanda is a place I found very inspiring. It was a place I read a lot about, and it was just really interesting to be there in person. Very beautiful and green and hilly country.
Awesome. Finish this sentence. I've never been to blank, but it's on my list.
Well, I was thinking about this earlier when you said Copenhagen. I've never been to Copenhagen, but it's definitely on
Really?
my list. Yeah, yeah. And I've never
Oh,
been to West Africa, which is where we run one of our tours. So I'm
yeah.
hoping to go there someday. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. What song gets you the most motivated?
Ooh. Um, what am I listening to these days? Been listening to a lot of classic reggae lately.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Watching the sunrise over the pyramids, Shanny, or the sunset from Signal Hill in Cape Town?
um, Yeah, Cape Town, Table Mountain is very beautiful. So I was there and hiked up Table Mountain. That would probably be my choice. But
Right?
pyramids are not bad either.
Yeah. Where do you feel your soul lives?
Oh, yes, that's an interesting question. Well, within myself, but within my family, I think, they are my heart and soul, and my partner Bonnie and my family are very important to me. So let's
Awesome.
let's say that.
Keeping it real, my friend. Shanny Hill, marketing manager at TDA Global Cycling. Thank you so much for taking the time, good sir, to join me today on the Fact Up podcast. I wish you and your family nothing but health and happiness in the new year. And we'll ride this out together and hopefully sit down and have an espresso / grapefruit rattler in the near future.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Thank you so much.